Let's get to the regions of the tournament. Let's start with the number 1 seed in the South, Auburn. They open up against either Alabama State or St. Francis. This is the South reason. Now, there's a thought that Louisville as an 8 seed is underseeded. And yet again, Creighton, of course, is just a team. Watch out with Greg McDermott and what they do in the Blue Jays. That's a great game in the opening round. A&M and Yale. That'll be kind of fun to watch. Any games here other than what I just mentioned, and that's near the top of the bracket, that kind of sticks out to you as something of interest?
In the South bracket, let me pull up the.
It's up on the screen. Okay.
Glass. I mean,
okay.
it's
okay.
Be respectful of my struggles.
Okay.
I think Louisville Creighton's going to be a super interesting game in that one. I wanted this UC San Diego and Michigan. Michigan they're coached by Dusty May, who's fantastic. I watched them twice over the weekend. They are so boring right now. So boring. I just wonder if a team that runs and guns will be a problem for them, and that I can't tell you I've watched any of UC San Diego, but it seems to be that's what they do. And I am terribly worried about Texas A&M and Yale because I personally have watched this story before with Yale in Providence, Rhode Island, that ended with the best sarcastic quote in a press conference that I've ever heard from Torian Prince to a guy who was literally dressed like Captain Kangaroo. The guy gets up, he has a red sweater. He goes, how does Yale out-rebound Baylor?
It's a great question.
And yeah, it is a good question. He should have asked it better of, why did you guys struggle on the rebounding today? What was, was there a guy who just you were surprised about? Something like that to give him a chance to answer the question and pay the other team a compliment. Instead, you just were so sarcastic and in his stupid red sweater. I mean, nobody saw him. If I really wish that you could see the other side of it, so you saw what I saw. And
you can't Google a picture of him?
I don't even know who he was.
Oh, okay.
I mean, some Providence guy.
Yeah. Well, so there's the South region. And Auburn, the number 1 seed, lost 3 of their last 4. Still, they were good. They were dominant for a long, long time, and they are the number 1. So that Louisville-Creighton game, that's just, again, with Louisville being really, really good. They were 18-2 in the ACC. Mm-hmm. Now, the ACC, we know, had 4 teams. Some people say 4 because North Carolina should not be a part of that, but they have 5. But Creighton, and it's a fun. They knocked Baylor out. Was it last year?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah. And here's the thing though about whoever Louisville, Creighton, whoever comes out of that region eventually trying to play Auburn. Can you stop Auburn? I kind of felt watching them. They lost 3 of their last 4, but it meant everybody that they were playing, those games meant a little bit more. In that moment, we've got to get this. A&M needed to get that win over Auburn to give them some forward momentum. They were still going to make the tournament, but they kind of in that moment needed a little bit more. I think that good luck stopping Janai Broome the rest of this month. Yeah, I mean, that's my assessment of that.
Yeah. So there's the South region. All right, let's go to the East. Number 1 seed Duke. We got to go East first, Garrett. There we go, Duke. There are several notes today that I was looking at that they probably have based on who all is in their region. Plus, Duke never seems to have to go out west if they're a number 1 seed. They're in their backyard. They earn that because they're probably right now overall the best team in the country. That's debatable, of course. But they open up with a win against American or Mount St. Mary's. That's a play-in game. The second round would be against Mississippi State or Baylor. This is an 8 and 9. The 9 seed more often than not beats the 8. Now, I don't know if that's the case this week, but that is what is the overall trend in NCAA tournament history, the 9 and the 8. This is like a flip them. That's why they're 8 and 9. And then they would get Baylor and or Mississippi State. We had a guest on yesterday to discuss Duke, and, it was John Gallagher. There's no way Baylor would have to shoot 50% from threes to have a chance, if they even win their opening game against Mississippi State. Arizona down there open up against Akron. The Zips, they can shoot it. BYU and VCU. When I see VCU, I think of Shaka Smart's VCU, and they're not quite like who they are. Alabama, Robert Morris at the bottom, the number 2 seed. Crimson Tide just can score a lot. And so there's the East Regional with Duke. Wisconsin, I don't know if there's anybody in there except on the bottom half of that bracket that could take out Duke in the tournament. With all due respect to Arizona.
BYU and Wisconsin score enough that again, if Baylor is a threat in that regard, according to John Gallagher, at least to
then
whatever
BYU will be.
That BYU would be, and of course Wisconsin would be, because Wisconsin set school records for scoring.
That's not
year.
the way they used to play.
No. Bo Ryan was more of a four corners
They
guy.
were a 50-49. If Wisconsin and Virginia had met in the national championship game, what was that, in 19 or whatever? The final would have been 38-37 or something like that.
And both coaches have been like, man, what an exciting game.
What an incredible.
Yeah, what a great game. Everybody was in foul trouble. Like that's what I said. 4 fouls, everyone, at least. No, I think that Duke is just, not that the ACC was all that terribly deep, but they didn't have Cooper Flagg. It didn't, if you told me that Cooper Flagg if I didn't know he existed, and I just watched the last 2 games that Duke played, I would still think they were one of the best teams in the country.
You're talking about the win against North Carolina.
Yeah, and then again Louisville. On Saturday.
Yeah.
So if I didn't know that he existed, if I just turned it on, I was like, man, this Duke team's really good, then I would still think that they were going to win this.
Yeah,
this region.
Yeah, they despite that, the last couple of games without him, and hopefully he's healthy.
Alabama can straight up and down score.
Yep.
Alabama cannot, and I know this kills Nate Oates, stop people from scoring. They're going to outscore you and outscore you and outscore you, which is why I think they're a little bit vulnerable to a team like BYU or Wisconsin later on in the tournament.
When Alabama and Auburn played, you knew it was going to be in the 90s, and I don't know if it was every time, but it just seemed like the way they played. The Midwest region with hello Big 12 champions back-to-back, the Houston Cougars and Kelvin Sampson. They open up against Southern Illinois Edwardsville. You have Gonzaga, who's kind of been under the radar. Remember, they opened the year up by winning by 30 or something against Baylor and beat their brains in. Georgia, that's an SEC team among all 14 of them. But Gonzaga.
Did you know that most calorie deficit calculators don't work? My dietitian recommended the Lasta to me, and it turned out to be the only one that got my calorie deficit right. Thanks to it, I lost 14 pounds in 1 week. Ready to kickstart your journey to healthy weight loss? Calculate your ideal calorie deficit using the Lasta app right now.
Is more of an unknown sleeping. Watch out for them this year than they have been in recent years because they've been so good. But there's a lot of talk about Gonzaga's been under the radar, and they're better than the 8 seed shows.
They probably are, although Georgia's good. That's such a weird thing. Mike White was at Florida just a few years ago, then left to take the Georgia job. In Florida, it's worked out for them, we'll say. But he's now gone into Georgia, and that's a team that's a little bit fun to watch. So that one, I think I'm leaning Georgia. I think they've got a little bit more horses than Gonzaga does this year. But Mark Few in March, it's hard to bet against him.
All right. So this next part of the Midwest region, the second level, there are 2 teams in here that you better watch yourself. One of them is McNeese State and Will Wade. LSU coach got caught up in that investigation. This guy next year is probably going to be coaching a Power 4 school somewhere. They're really good. McNeese State and Clemson, who knocked Baylor out last year, remember? And that's when the coach said, hey, this Big 12, #1 conference in America, and the ACC had a great run last year. That's a hell of a game in round one in the Midwest region.
Will Wade graduated from which university, Smokey?
I don't even know.
He's Clemson grad.
Oh, okay.
He's a Clemson grad.
That's right. He mentioned something about when he hears the fight song, he's got to be careful not to.
He's a Clemson grad. I'm calling it right now. Will Wade beats Clemson in the first round, gets $1 million extra bucks out of NC State to be their next head coach.
That's a mean thing and the NCAA can be mean in a way that we think not because of NCAA investigations and how stubborn they are and how all the stuff we've seen in 5 years in college athletics is because the NCAA was so damn arrogant. But putting those two together is awesome. That is awesome. Purdue and High Point. Now, Purdue's the favorite. High Point this is a dangerous team. It's one of those teams, there are going to be 12 and 13 seeds that win the first round. So, Purdue and High Point, but that Clemson-McNeese State, that is evil that they put those two together.
You're always searching for stories. I'm waiting for the day that Grand Canyon and Baylor meet in the tournament. And everybody's rubbing their hands.
They are in women's basketball.
Yeah. I mean, they do in men's basketball, and it's Bryce v. Scott. But I do like. I think that the bottom part of this bracket, like once you get like High Point, they're on a roll, and this is their first ever NCAA tournament and all that. I would not hey, congratulations, you've got Matt Painter and Purdue on a little bit of a down year. Coming off of a national championship runner-up, maybe you get them. But I think the bottom of this part of the bracket is a little bit more chalk than the top part of it because outside of McNeese, like I said, I'm calling that one. I think, 8-9, like I said, I think Georgia wins, but that's not really – 8-9 upset. That's not really an upset. 8-9, you're essentially the same thing.
9 seeds have beaten 8 seeds more often in tournament history. In that third part of the Midwest region, we got one more region after this. It'll be the West. Texas and Xavier in the opening round. That's a good matchup. Xavier, a basketball, the Musketeers. That winner will play Illinois, Brad Underwood, and the Fighting Illini in what would be fun. That's got a bracket with Illinois is a big boy basketball school. Xavier's got basketball history. Texas has got some pretty good history, although this year they had to grind it out to get to where they are. And some people thought that maybe they shouldn't be in there either, but they are. Kentucky at the bottom of that against Troy, which is a Cinderella team. So I think Kentucky's just better than everybody there, but that could be fun. And then the next one, I look at these schools. Okay, UCLA's a brand name, but Tennessee, I think, walks right through the first couple of rounds with Wofford, and then eventually whoever wins UCLA and Utah State. Now, let's go to the West. Florida. They just hammered everybody in the SEC tournament, and they are red hot. UConn, Oklahoma. UConn, 2-time defending champions, not who they have been. It's been a tough year. Dan Hurley has been fighting, scratching, and clawing, which is kind of who he is. They just haven't been able to put much together. And Oklahoma, another team, people are like, why are they in the tournament? I see a lot of this, and I've seen a lot of this the last couple of days. People who have texted me or whatever and tweets, how come Oklahoma's a 9 seed? Don't always look at the seed of where the tournament people think you are. It's weird. Now, I just said more 9s beat 8s, so that would be Oklahoma has a chance, of course. But retired stockbroker was asking me about why are some 16 seeds getting a first round? You have to do a play-in to get to 16, and some are already there. They slot this thing differently than if they just go 1 through 68. It's kind of weird. It's hard to explain, but that's an interesting game with UConn in Oklahoma. There's Bryce Drew at 13, Grand Canyon.
Look, Maryland's been very good this year. I'm going to call the upset in this one. I'll take Bryce Drew and Grand Canyon at least to get to the next day, to the round of 32. I don't like that matchup they would have, which would be Memphis, I think, although Colorado State can score a little bit. But I like what Penny Hardaway looks like he's finally doing what they paid him to do all that time.
It's been a rough,
at Memphis.
couple of times.
But it does depend. Tyrese Hunter, they're at Memphis, a little banged up. How far they go probably depends on how healthy he is. Although I don't think they're going to go very far, Memphis, because eventually they'll have to play the dirty, disgusting Florida Gators. And because of that, a Sweet 16 run would be great, but it would end there for anybody who has to play Florida.
All right, the next part of that, Missouri-Drake. I'm going to take Drake in the first round against Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech and North Carolina-Wilmington. This is interesting with Grant McCaslin. They are really good. They were not but, a win or two away from possibly getting a number 1 seed or a 2 seed. Have the win against Houston without JT Toppin for most of that game. They've won without some of their better players. Williams and McMillan have been hurt. Grant McCaslin said that they will be available, but to the extent of how much or how long they can play, that remains to be seen. But I'm still very much in the corner of Texas Tech. Then the next group down, teams that have been, Kansas. Who are they? All of a sudden, do they get to a tournament of this level and change who they've been most of this year, which has been inconsistent against Arkansas? Then St. John's and Rick Pitino against our good friend Chris Crutchfield and University of Nebraska in Omaha. So those are the matchups in the regions throughout the country in the tournament.
Yeah, I think that when you look at Self versus Calipari in the first round, that's another one of those like NCAA tournament things. Winner probably gets Rick Pitino. I love that for the first weekend. For basketball fans, I don't love it for my wife, who's going to be stressed out the whole time. But I think ultimately, I don't know if – Kansas can – they can score more than both these teams. So from a Big 12 perspective, they're probably more offensively gifted. They just don't have the chemistry that St. John's has right now. And we talked to Kevin Flaherty yesterday, and it's just that's the thing. He said that they're just not on the same page, or there's varying levels of interest and effort on this team, and they need to move on from this veteran squad that was. 2 of them were there when they won a couple years ago. Hunter Dickinson came in, and it's just. We said John Gallagher even said, look, I've had 6-year guys. We just got to get the 6-year guys gone. They just got to be gone because their progress stopping. And look, it would not surprise me to see Kansas get hot, especially when you got a guy like Hunter Dickinson. Big guys make a bigger difference in March than they do a lot of time during the season. But, Tech is in this region. And again, I think it's Florida and Tech in the Elite Eight. But I don't see. It's hard for me to say this out loud. After we've gone through all this, I think Florida's the best team in the country, and I think they're going to win it.
I just filled out my bracket, and this is bad because I didn't look at the seeds. I looked at the games, and I have all the number 1 seeds getting to the Final Four, which is so disgusting. So I've got to change that. I really wasn't looking at the seeds. I was looking at Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. I have to change that. I can't just go with all the number 1 seeds.